start.
Take over the day.
Oh, yes.
Well, thank you so much, Phil, for the kind introduction. I do beg your indulgence, everyone, this morning. Here, I live on the west coast of Canada, outside Vancouver, and British Columbia, specifically Vancouver, holds the world's record today for the absolute worst air quality. It is just appalling. There's no cloud, but you can't see the sun at all because the smoke is so thick. But the effect is that it's really hard on my voice box, so I'm feeling a little scratchy here. I've got 2 glasses of water. If it gets really bad, I may have to duck off stage here and go get some more water, so I can keep pressing forward. Now, if you saw the first masterclass that we did, you'll know that we talked about some of the secrets of consulting. Today, what I want to do is talk through some of these mindset shifts that engineers have to go through to be successful as management consultants. The idea here is that some of you may be, because of the rounds of job losses and job reductions going on in Houston and across North America in oil and gas, you may be attracted to an opportunity that might exist in one of these big consulting firms. I was a partner in Deloitte for 20 years. And we were regularly looked for high energy, interesting professionals in oil and gas who could come in as industrial experts and join the practice as a business consultant. And there's good careers there, not to turn and say, well, their consultants are, it's not a very attractive career model. Actually, it's very attractive, or can be very attractive. But I have to say that for those who did come into consulting from industry, many struggled to survive. Partially that was some of the learning curve effects, which you talked about in the last masterclass, but there was also this series of thinking patterns that are very common in consulting, but which are not common in oil and gas. And so what we want to do today was actually walk you through the way consultants tend to think, the mindset that they approach to the world. Because if you can embrace some of these mindset concepts quickly, your chances of success as a consultant go up considerably. And to do that, I'm just going to present some of these ideas using my iPad as a kind of a drawing tool. So the first thing is the collaboration model in consulting. One of the things I noticed when I was recruiting engineers out of oil and gas is that the oil and gas industry tends to hire industrial professionals because you have a very specific insight or knowledge or skill or what have you. That is what your employer in oil and gas hired you for. You're a drilling engineer, say, or you're a geologist, or you're a subsurface professional. The challenge, though, is that this is I call this the solo expert model. You have your expertise, and you're being paid because you have that expertise, and you contribute that expertise. And often you're not questioned very much, even internally, because you have that. You are the expert. In consulting, it doesn't work that way. Consulting is a team sport. The problems clients kind of want consultants to solve are not the kinds of problems that individuals can solve. It takes teams to tackle these problems. So there's a collaboration model or a consultative model here that the consulting industry is very, very comfortable with, but I find that the engineering profession can struggle with. If I were to draw it as an illustration here, it would look something like this. This is you in the center. You are here, and in the consulting model, you're in the industrial model, your expertise is you. You are your own brand, if you like. But in the consulting world, you often have to engage with other individuals who are experts in their field, but they may be extremely junior, like very, 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 very junior, actually. So you'll have to engage with junior professionals. You'll often have to engage with peers, individuals who say have a related expertise in their area, but which is beyond yours. And a good example of this would be financial professionals or commercial people. in consulting. It's often a requirement that for clients when they're trying to solve problems, they need to understand the economic implications of that. That means that as the engineer, you are going to have to engage head to head, face to face, with peers outside of in these other areas, and as well, you'll have to engage with the owners of the business, the consulting models, and these are the other partners. While there isn't a strict hierarchy in consulting, there actually is certainly an owner-employee business construct that exists in this model, and that learning how to work within this model takes some time. I watched this quite visibly. I was working at a large oil company that was brought together their operations professionals from one of the oil sands plays, Christina Lake, I think, or one of the plays in eastern Alberta. And it had operations professionals in the room, and they also had the technology professionals for the commercial IT professionals in the room. This was the first time these people had ever met. This is just 4 or 5 years ago. The company had been around for 15, 20 years. But this is the first time these two groups got together, and they harbored some quite interesting and very odd ideas about each other that were blocking their ability to even be successful. As a consultant, that's just death. You can't, it doesn't work that way. Consultants, to be successful, you have to set aside any of these preconceptions and ideas you might have about other parts of the business and their capabilities, what they stand for, their values, and look beyond that. As an example, the operations professionals valued 24/7 operations and high reliability and integrity, as they should. But the commercial people, deeply concerned about cyber issues and the desktop performance and the networking and the like. And we try and bring these two groups together to solve a pretty simple problem, like how do I bring a drone to run at my facility? It's got to span these two worlds. That's a very complicated problem to solve. But these two groups really struggled because they simply couldn't figure out and get beyond this collaboration model outside of their own domain. So I find that this is a really, really important mindset shift that engineers have to get through, which is your expertise, as important as it is necessary, but not sufficient to solve the kinds of problems that consultants are often asked to help their clients solve. And you have to work very, very gracefully and easily and without a lot of arrogance and preconceived ideas about your peers and your collaborators. And all it comes across, how you come across becomes really, really important. So it's an important mindset shift. So that's shift number one, is the collaboration model. They even bring in, and I used to do this in consulting, and I know other firms do this too. We would test for this during recruiting. You would be, we would put the industry professionals through the recruiting process, where the first person you're going to see is the junior person. And what they're trying to figure out is, how well do you relate to someone who is very much your junior, like a 24-year-old, when you're 45 or 50? How do you relate to that person? Do you come across as collaborative or bossy? Do you come across as arrogant or empathetic? Do you come across as a student, or do you play the role of the teacher? How do you craft that relationship? And we pretty quickly could filter out individuals during recruiting, because we could see they just didn't understand and this mindset about being able to work with a whole range of different people in this kind of collaboration construct. So to kind of make a picture look like this, this is the kind of the pretty drawing. You're in the center, yes, as our brand, but your success is often just defined entirely about how well you collaborate with others. So that was mind shift number one, this collaboration model. Building answers together with other people becomes really, really important. Second mindset shift is having a point of view. I got to tell you, in oil and gas, you are often, your point of view is defined by your company's point of view. But when you're a consultant, the consulting firm might not have a point of view about the industry. And so you have to have your own, so there's a clear expectation. You will have your own point of view. This was brought home to me early on in my career when I was on my path to becoming an owner in the business, a partner. And so I developed a very, very interesting point of view that was about the future of technology in oil and gas. And I would take this around to various senior leaders in the oil and gas industry. And it was amazing how many people would hire me because they saw this vision, this point of view, and they loved it. And they said, I don't have one of my own. I'm an oil professional in an oil company, but I don't have my own point of view. You've got one. I'd like to make your vision my vision. Come on in and help me implement this. So the point of view turned out to be incredibly, incredibly important. When I think of my point of view, I think of it as having a point of view or perspective around what I see as forecasted possible outcomes based on what's going on at the intersection of, say, two domains. I use personally for mine, because I work in the world of digital, I look at the intersection of the digital industry and the oil and gas industry. And what I do is I spend my time trying to articulate what's going to happen at the intersection of these two sectors, these two industries. As you can imagine, there's lots going on in here, lots and lots and lots of dynamic change and impacts and the like. This point of view should be well-rounded. It's not just, blockchain will take over the world, but it needs to also include talent and economics and money, the technology, of course. It should include policy, might even bring in geopolitics, certainly supply and demand. Like what is all of this? How do these various factors all come together to create this point of view? The point of view has to evolve. It can't be static either. And it helps bring clarity to the client's world, but at the same time, it needs to be open to evolve. So in my case, my points of view actually turn into books. I write them down as blog articles. After I collect a handful of them, then 60 or so, then you know what? I've got another book, and I can turn those into a publication. I can turn them into podcasts and the like. But the important point here is that if you don't have a point of view, you're just another worker bee. It's when you have a point of view, that's when you step out and you become a leader. And in the consulting world, consultants are looking for people who can lead, people who can help clients see the world through a different lens, get on board, and then purchase consulting services to help them achieve that and deliver against that point of view. And just to bear in mind, it's as a consultant working in oil and gas, it is sometimes baffling how I meet so many industrial professionals inside oil and gas companies, and they don't really have a point of view or perspective around the future. They're just producing. And I think that's a big gap. When you become a consultant, or if you join a consulting industry, this articulation of a point of view becomes a really, really important feature of your success. There's many different ways to kind of frame one. I look at the intersection of, if you like, this is an industry and technology, the digital industry. You could quite easily have a point of view about, if you're an industrial professional industry, and instead of digital, you could say, I have a point of view about the changes going on in supply chain. Supply chain constantly changing, very dynamic. And it's just take the world of tariffs. Like if you're an oil and gas professional today and you're a company, you're looking at steel tariffs, aluminum tariffs, equipment tariffs, issues related to people, you definitely want to talk to somebody who has a point of view about how the industry is going to have to deal with these various supply chain issues. Perhaps it's human capital. Maybe it's I'm interested in talent and how the role of the education system is going to be delivering the talent this industry requires. How's the industry going to cope with all these crazy layoffs going on? at the moment across the planet. The industry is hungry for this point of view. Hungry. They can pay for it, but I can tell you, if you've got one and you can share it and articulate it in a recruiting interview or with your meeting with a client, you're one step ahead. One step ahead. And so the point of view becomes a marketing tool, a personal differentiator. And in the recruiting side, if they say, so you ask the question, so what's your outlook on the industry? Gosh, you better have one. And this is where you can literally sketch out on a napkin your perspectives and your ideas. This is killer. It's catnip to consultants to see people who have this kind of point of view. And for customers and clients, they're prepared to pay handsomely for it. So as I say, the having it is, and way to think about it is having it in hand, really, really important as a kind of a part of the mindset that you need to embrace.
Jeffrey, we've got a quick question here.
Yeah, fire away.
What if you are looking to change industries, and so the industry part is oil and gas, but you're wanting to change to something else? Is it worth trying to use oil and gas, or should you talk about the new industry?
If you're pursuing an opportunity in a new industry, let's call it, say, energy more broadly, I would change my point of view to be that industry. Absolutely. Yeah. If you're sitting down in front of a consulting organization for recruiting purposes, and they're specifically looking for someone with oil and gas as industrial expertise, you talking about solar or carbon capture, what have you, might not be the right move from a recruiting standpoint. If you wish to shift out of oil and gas, you're one of the many who have taken a package or are about to take a package, you're going to be offered a package, and you're considering another industry. I would absolutely put the point of view together about the other industry, the industry you're going to. A way to think about that might be, what are the lessons from your industrial experience in oil and gas that you believe need to be brought into the new industry? That's a really powerful point of view. And what is it that you can see that has made oil and gas successful and made you successful? How does that apply to the industry you're going to? Very important. That would be a great point of view. I'd definitely do that one.
All right, thanks.
All right, let's turn to third shift, mindset shift. This one is the approach to problem solving in oil and gas. I share a little story about how this worked for me. I was contacted by a client at one point, long ago now, so I can probably share names. The company was called Tech Coal, and they're a coal mining company. The VP of HR called me up and said, "Hey, we got a problem. The last 10 people we've offered jobs to have handed in the letter of offer 2 weeks after we've given it to them, because they couldn't find a place to live in the town where the mine was located. What do we do?" Well, the glib answer is, well, why don't you go into the housing building industry and build houses for people? Maybe you build an apartment building and put their new recruits into there. Maybe you buy a bunch of houses as housing stock and rent them back to the employees, so you become a landlord. Maybe you adopt that sort of ancient mining model from years ago, where you set up a mining town and you actually own the town and all of its buildings and the like. So it's a whole bunch of ideas you could kind of throw out there. Well, it turns out that's not how consultants think. How consultants think is, yeah, you know what? There's a bunch of ideas out there. I can give you this idea. How about that one? I could give you one that looks like this, maybe one that looks like this. Here's my ideas. Here's build a town, build your own town, build an apartment building for people, become a landlord. There's a bunch of good ideas. This is not how consultants advise clients. They have to take it 2 steps further. The first step is to say, yeah, that's fine, but how are you going to analyze your ideas or your suggestions so that you can say, identify which ones make the most sense, which one's going to work? And so you'll get the consultant will be bringing tools and methods to a client to be able to analyze and diagnose these opportunities. Tools like SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Another good one is DuPont analysis. If you're not familiar with that, it's a tool invented by the DuPont organization 60, 70 years ago, which looks at the financial statements and the impact of different business decisions on assets, liabilities, and financial statement issues. Maybe Porter's 5 forces analysis. Maybe you use Steeple, which is a technique that has you look at the landscape through a variety of different lenses. Steeple stands for social, technology, environmental, ethical, legal, as these different mnemonics. That's step 2. Step 3 is you then say the consultant is, yeah, these are fine. I got some ideas. I have some tools and techniques for doing the analysis, but how are you going to solve the problem? And this is where the consultant then lays out the breadcrumbs, the actual action steps that they're going to follow to solve the problem. This is what clients pay for, and is what consultants who are hiring people, is what they're looking for, is not just people who can come up with the good ideas, but also here's how you would analyze those ideas to come up with the right answer, along with the steps you're going to take to come up with the answer. These frameworks, they're the tools, and if you have 2 or 3 in hand that you can articulate or work through, that's great, because clients they themselves don't have and use these tools very much, because they're not solving these kinds of problems on a daily basis. So if you bring these to bear, you are one step ahead. In the recruiting interview, I would often ask people, I just give them the case example. You've just been contacted by the VP of HR at Tech Coal, and he's just explained the problem. I can't find housing for people. What are you going to do? And if the individual identified a bunch of ideas and then stopped, they didn't take it any further, we didn't hire them. They didn't think like consultants. The ones who got hired were the ones who said, yeah, here's a bunch of ideas, but that's not sufficient. What we really need is, here's how I would analyze this problem. Here's the kind of analysis that I would go through. And if we had gave them time, like 15 minutes or 20 minutes to go away and study the problem, the best consultants are the ones that would come back with, here's the analysis that I would go through. In the interview, did they even ask questions? Simple stuff. In the case of Tech Coal with this mining town, when we actually did the project, what we discovered was the employees were right. The houses were being snapped up really quickly. They were on the market for less than 7 days, typically, when the average in Alberta at the time was 30. So there was high demand for the houses. We discovered that the oil sands companies were flying down to the community and recruiting people to go join work in oil sands. They would fly them up to the oil sands mines, because mining people are really valuable if you can find them. So why not go poach them away from tech? So tech is losing people on the one side, but because the oil sands companies would fly them to work, there was no reason for the employee to relocate to Fort McMurray. So they stayed in the local towns. And net effect was the housing stock was not turning over. Some guy named Greg Norman, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, golfer. I don't golf, but anyway, Australian golfer. He was retained locally to design this world-class golf course. So suddenly the mining town went from, a place where miners would live to a 4 seasons resort with an outstanding world-class golf course, a ski hill, and so on. What does that do to the housing stock? Makes it very, it makes it very expensive, and lots of people come in and buy houses up and turn them into their sort of cottages and winter homes. So the employees were right. There really wasn't enough housing. But just slapping up an apartment building wasn't going to cut it. It would require, that's a ton of capital. It takes 4 or 5 years for that to work. And the company needed, with turnover rates, they needed hundreds of people every year. So we need to come up with some other and more creative ideas to help them solve the problem. So it's very complicated. If you don't, jump to quick answers, simple answers, don't ask questions, don't show much curiosity, don't have frameworks, and don't have a way to solve problems, you're not going to be successful. You really do need to have some of this mindset, problem-solving mindset, very, very different than in industry. But help clients solve their concerns. I draw the picture that looks like this to kind of illustrate the point. Next mindset.
I've got another quick question, Jeffrey.
Yeah. So
is it sufficient to use one of the standard frameworks, or do you need to come up with your own? Do you get any, is it helpful to you? Does it make it better if you come up with your own?
Probably not. Probably better to use a standard one. The reason for this is if you use your own, you create a little risk that the person who you're working with might not, now this is a recruiting interview, I would say, let's divide them up into the two. If it's a recruiting interview, you're far better off to use a standard, a reliable, proven template or method that gets to a reliable answer. If it's with a client on a specific assignment, very often the frameworks are adapted to suit the client's specific circumstances, and bringing your own in. The consultants often have their very own frameworks that they will use and sell, but you won't know that until you join them and they teach you the frameworks. But in a consulting assignment, it's I've used with some, I've used SWOT analysis. With this housing one, we had to create our own framework because there was no framework for looking at this bizarre question of how do you compensate for a structural breakdown in house construction in a town that's being plagued by too much demand and not enough supply. Like, there wasn't a framework you could come to bear there. So we had to develop one that we used on our own. But for the interview, I would always rely on something that the interviewer can quickly understand and see that you think using frameworks. All right.
All right, thanks.
All right, pyramid principle. One day, a little story here. One day, I was sitting in the office of the CEO of Irving Oil. Irving Oil, in case you don't know, is one of North America's largest it's certainly North America's largest private oil refinery, 350,000 barrels a day. It's a gigantic facility. And the CEO got up from his desk. I'm sitting on the other side of his desk. He got up from his desk, walked out to go deal with his assistant in the outside office, leaving me alone in the CEO's office. So what do? Well, you don't go rifling through his desk, but you certainly take the time to look around. And the question I had in my mind was, what is the CEO reading? And turns out he had two reports on his desk. One that I and my team had produced, and one that I'd never seen before. It's been a study underway by McKinsey, and it was happening at the same time. So he was able to compare my work head to head with McKinsey. Now, just to be clear, my hourly rate for consulting at the time, I'm pulling out of the air, but you think $200 an hour or so. McKinsey, 10 times that. Easy. Dawned on me right there. My work needed to be as good as McKinsey, but I could operate at 1/10 the price. I could knock McKinsey out of Irving Oil. And it took me 18 months, but I did it. And the secret was to copy some of McKinsey's tools. And one of their tools is the pyramid principle. This is written, you can buy the book. It was written by a woman named Barbara Minto. Barbara Minto was a McKinsey consultant. She sat in the back room, and her job was to take the work that the McKinsey consultants would produce, and she would turn it into custom products for their customers, their deliverables. And so she put her ideas together into a book, which she called the pyramid principle. And the pyramid principle, without going into the details too much, says that you need to take a top-down approach to problem solving. And it starts with a very, very important construct, which is called situation, complication, question, and answer, SCQA. Situation. The situation is when you're doing your analysis for a client is you describe the situation, get the fact base correct. What are the current facts? The complication is what has changed or what is changing that has put your situation no longer tenable. It's not going to survive, or it's under threat, or will change. The question is implied. What is the question that this then raises? And then your task as the consultant is to articulate the answer. I use this technique to write emails. I use it to write blog articles, to run podcasts. It is one of the most important constructs I've ever, in my entire life. It has altered how I think about the world, was discovery of this particular technique. A situation, complication, question, and answer. So with the tech is one example. Situation, we're offering, we have turnover in our mine. We offer employees job offers. They go into the community looking for housing. And historically, this has always worked. Complication, they're not able to find a house to live in. They're now coming back and not able to take the job on. What's the question? Why is this happening? And what's the answer? And now the consultant then goes away and does the research. The SCQA as a technique, it leads to all kinds of different questions. The why is it happening? How might we fix it? We did try to fix it, but didn't work. Why didn't it work? It can be used to frame up all kinds of different problems. It's even used in the recruiting interview. The recruiters, when they're interviewing people to join the consulting firms, are trying to see, do you think like this? Do you think like this? So that you kind of fit in and share that particular mindset. The pyramid principle. It's very, very, very important. And in the construct of consulting, it's how even your deliverables are all written, all follow this very, very careful, very thoughtful way to articulate an answer to a customer. It structures your storytelling. And this is the best part. It's worth $2,000 an hour. That's what companies pay McKinsey to do consulting work. And I don't know about you, but I'm quite happy with $2,000 an hour. That's pretty good deal. So not only did it in my contact center, not only did I vanquish McKinsey, but I took over all of their work, and Irving won as well, because they were getting effectively equivalent work for a fraction of the price. So the pyramid principle, critical construct to how consultants work. All right, Phil, any questions, or I'll move on to the next one?
Nope, we're good.
All right, next one is the what I call is the consulting quality curve. The quality curve. At one time, I was working with a junior consultant, and they gave them a task, and they went away for 2 weeks. And I was like, well, I wonder what's going on over there. And they finally came back, and they were completely off on the wrong track. It was a disaster. Here's the problem. If I drew a chart about quality, this is time, and this is the quality of the work. What had happened with this junior is that they'd gone away and they'd started work, but they'd quickly plateaued, and a whole week went by before they sort of checked in. So quality was not rising in this particular situation. This is the challenge of many solo professionals and experts in their field. You can only go so far, and then your quality can plateau. Now, when you're in really in-depth expert, maybe that works well. But in consulting, doesn't work well at all. What you really want, clients are paying for this. Question is, how do you get there fast? And the key is to identify really quickly on in the process, like here, where you should be conducting an intervention or a review or a consultation to add to or do some preliminary analysis that allows you to move the quality curve up. And then what happens is you start the journey, this time at another high level, and eventually that plateaus. Then you have another intervention, and then the quality goes up again. And then another one, and the quality goes up again. So by the time you get to here, you've achieved extraordinarily high quality for your work. And this goes back to the original model I talked about, the peers, you in the center where you're engaging with juniors and peers and seniors. The best consultants are the ones that identify when they have reached that turning point, the pinch point in the curve, and that's when they stick their hand up and go, "I need to have a meeting to talk through what I'm finding and what I'm learning, because I want to make sure I'm still on the right track, but I also think that there might be some changes here." Knowing when to call for help, really, really key. These interventions improve quality dramatically and quickly, and they're extremely economic when you do it this way, rather than going out 4 or 5 weeks and discovering that no progress has been made. So the consulting quality curve, this is a key mindset thing, is knowing when to have an intervention. One of my partners had a great saying. He said, if there's going to be a murder, you want to hand around the murder weapon so you get lots of fingerprints on it, right? That way you can't tell who committed the crime. So the same analogy here. If you're trying to achieve a very, very high quality output, get lots of hands involved, because what that does is it improves the quality of the work, different points of view and the like. In the recruiting interview, this is where you are, if you have the opportunity, you ask various questions to help improve your analysis and your thinking. And this is the clear sign to the consulting organization that this is you think like a consultant. And so you work your way up the quality curve. All right. Last but not least, final mindset shift is the edit model. Now, the edit model, I was in one of my first review meetings with one of the owners, and he got all distracted because I had this spelling mistake on my deliverable. I was really proud of the work. Like, I put a ton of effort into it, and here he's kind of getting lost in the weeds. And I'm like, what's that all about? And that's what I'd learned, was that there is a structured edit model, the way that consultants review and improve the quality of their work. That's what goes on in those interventions. And it follows this structure here: C, S, S, M. C stands for content. Do you have the right content? To go back to the problem solving example we used earlier, did you just throw out a apartment building as your idea? Well, what is the data that you've used to help you analyze this problem? So what is the content? Next is the structure. Did you structure your analysis or your thinking so that it was logical, clear, and got to a plausible, reasonable answer that a sane and reasonable person would agree with? Do you have the right structure? Next is style. Did you present your analysis stylistically in a fashion that matches the consulting brand you're working in, or the style of which your organization generally communicates? And then finally, have you followed the good mechanics of English? In consulting, when people are reviewing work and working together, they are operating on all of these planes at the same time, which is why it gets irritating, but it happens. They get confused and they get irritated and get drawn into dealing with these mechanical issues like spelling and punctuation and the like. Yeah, you just have to get used to this. This is just how it is. And the solution was always two things I found. One was always work with, say to the person you're dealing with your intervention, this is not about making sure we've got the right content. This is about whether have we structured the content that we have so that it makes sense. And I want you to ignore the style and the mechanics, please. And so you just tell them, I've set the ground rules. You're not going to deal with this down this layer. That's step one. Step two was, even if you said, I don't want to deal with the mechanics, you always make sure that you had your punctuation, spelling, and all other nonsense absolutely fine, so that they couldn't get distracted on it. I know this is a really minor thing, but I got to tell you, like, if you drop in a resume or a letter to a client or someone who's recruiting you, and you've got spelling mistakes, like, you're not even going to get past the front door. So you may as well get used to this. I know that in the engineering world, you kind of go, you have to look beyond that. It's not that big a deal. It's more important that we've got the right analytics done here. We've got the right content. In consulting, not good enough. Not good enough. You gotta make sure you do both. So there you are. 6 mindset shifts you gotta get through. Number 1, it's a collaboration model. How are you gonna work collaboratively? Number 2, do you have a point of view? And can you express that in a structured way? Number 3, how do you approach problem solving? It's not just solutions, but also structured frameworks to analyze the solution and then pathways to do the actual work. Number 4, the pyramid principle, situation, complication, question, and answer. Number 5, interventions, when to have them and why, and how that drives your quality up. And number 6 is the edit model, how the organizations, the consulting organizations edit and think about the content that they're producing for clients. Now, as a bonus, I do want to wrap up on what I call some golden rules. Consulting has lots of golden rules. I shared a couple the last time, but I want to share a couple this time. So first golden rule, that kind of rule of thumb, but this one is 50, 30, 20. That's the first rule, 50, 30, 20. 50, 30, 20 is the rule of thumb about how much time you should spend on specific activities. Do you remember back when I talked about the applying the framework and doing the consulting assignment? How much time should you spend on each stage of that journey? Well, it turns out 50% of your time should be spent on data collection, getting the content and into hand. So this is your interviews, your analysis, and so forth. 30% should be spent on doing your analysis. And the final 20% is going to be spent on communicating, writing it up, presenting it, doing your slides, etc. 20%. You have to think about this. If you have $1 million project and you're going to spend $200,000 doing PowerPoint. Now, I know in the engineering world, you kind of go, that's just ridiculous, but that's the way it works. If you're trying to convince the board of directors to spend $500 million on something, you better make sure your presentations and how you write and so forth, that better be really good, really good. 50, 30, 20. Anytime assignments got out of whack or budgets got sideways or what have you, you could always trace it back to this, weren't following the golden rule, how they spent their time. Now, this ratio changes. ChatGPT and these analytic tools, they actually provide you with some acceleration effect in here. And the AI tools are even doing things like improving the speed by which you can present your conclusions and the like. So this formula is flexing and adapting as we bring these new technologies into play. But the basic formula, I don't believe, has changed that much. We still have to spend, if you're a good consultant, you're going to spend time in these buckets. So don't underestimate the amount of time specifically in here. One of my things with my industry, new industry hires, the amount of energy is spent to get them to appreciate how much time you have to spend putting communications together, practicing, rehearsing a presentation. How many of us go into meetings where we've spent $500 million budget on something, I haven't had a rehearsal about what we're going to say to get the board to agree to the funding. So the best consultants, they put real money into thinking through, how am I going to convince you to act in the way that I've finally recommended? So that's rule of thumb number 1.
Jeffrey, it looks like we've got a question from Philip Henderson. If you can use the chat, then I can, or not the chat, the Q&A, then I'll be able to ask Jeffrey your question. Yeah, that's why I see your hand raised. If you can go to the Q&A, which is over at the bottom screen, those 9 dots, and then click on meeting tools and then go to Q&A. It should allow you to ask a question. So I'll let you go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Philip, you can ask your question.
All right.
And then we'll address it.
All right. The last rule of thumb is the rule of 5. The rule of 5. So the rule of 5 is the number of interviews that you need to do before you have you know the answer to a particular problem or question you're being asked to solve is 5. Now I know this sounds really strange, But I'll take my example with Tech Coal. We're doing the housing problem. After we had interviewed 5 people in the organization, we had pretty much 80% of the problem understood and enough data that we could start building seriously good hypotheses about what research and additional work we needed to do. Everything after that was change management, where we're just helping people feel like they were consulted and talked to and so on. But you have very, very significant diminishing returns after 5. When it comes to doing consulting work or advisory work, this is one of those magical numbers you should kind of keep in your head. After 5, you're not learning anything further. The data you're going to get, especially when you're doing interviews, is not going to be improved after you've spoken with 5 experts inside a company. They're going to know what's going on. They just lack the framework and the pathway to do the analysis to figure out how to solve the problem. But they often know the answer. And sometimes that is the magic of being an outside advisor. You get to go and talk to 5 different people, surface what the answer is, figure out the analytics to get to prove it, and then present your results. And it works like a charm. All right, there we are, Philip. We've had 6 mindset shifts and my 2 secret rules of thumb that define the success as a consultant.
Yeah. So thanks, Philip, for your question as well. So his question is, where does the 30% of time for sales fit into that? Or how does the sales part fit into this ratio?
Yeah, it doesn't fit in the ratio. This is once you've sold the job, this is how your time is spent on the job. So the sales time is a separate matter entirely. But if you're to do the framing of it, I did a chart before. Let me see if I can draw something to illustrate the point. Let's see. I'll add in a new layer here. So before I drew a picture that showed this is your selling versus doing chart. This is do, and this is sell. And this is over time in your career, and this is the percentage of your time spent. So when you're doing your job, this is your 50, 30, 20 is in here. And if you're 100%, if you're principally a doer, and this, say 80% of your day is spent in doing, and 20% is spent in selling, and you're on an assignment, your assignment, since your week, say, might be 40 hours, 8 versus 32 hours, 50% of your 32, so 16 hours that week is going to be spent doing research. That's what that formula would say. Your selling is independent of that part. Not sure if that answers the question, but 50, 30, 20 is just doing the work, not selling work.
Yes. Okay. And Ken had a question in terms of where would you go to find an overview of the standard consultant frameworks? I know you mentioned Barbara Minto, but is there a place that you know of where you can find an overview of the different ones used?
I don't know of a place where you could find one. The fastest answer these days is to sit down with ChatGPT and say, give me the top 10 strategy frameworks. And ChatGPT will churn them out for you. But I would say that if you were to work with the Barbara Minto book and read through it and embraced it and worked with it fully, I mean, it's a very, very thorough work. I can tell you that it has in it all the framing and frameworks that you could use, certainly for delivery of work and to survive a recruiting interview. But if you're thinking about how do you learn to apply these frameworks and where might you use them, the fastest these days is ChatGPT, I suspect.
Yeah, and hopefully you can see it. I have a link to Barbara Minto's book here. I'll put it in the chat. Hopefully, you can see it. So there's a link to the book that Jeffrey is talking about.
Change Your Life. This one, best book I've ever bought.
That's a
I've
pretty
written
nice
3,
stuff.
I can tell you. Way better than my books. Life changing.
And then we'll definitely send out a link to that book as well in the emails that follow up with the course. So
Yeah, you bet.
all right. So now that leads to the next step. Let me share my screen here.
I was going to put camera off here, Phil. So you've got
All right.
more
Yeah,
real estate work.
let me unpin you.
Thanks.
So now I'm going to give you a chance to talk about the Engineer Career Pivot Program, which is Jeffrey and I's work to help oil and gas engineers, technical people pivot into the next phase of their career, to find certainty in the world of uncertainty with oil and gas. What Jeffrey's talked about fits within step 3 of our program, which is personal possibilities. You heard him talk about how consultants, oil and gas hires for skill and specific experience, whereas consultants hire for talent and underlying ability. And that's what step 3 of our program does. We go through and we teach you one of the frameworks Jeffrey mentioned, which is the steeple. We highlight how you can use it to understand a macro perspective of where the world is heading. That way you can match it with your background and specific experience to get the talent you need to address the problems of the future. We've done this through a series of videos on our online learning platform. It's a set of on-demand video with individual exercises that you work through. It's fast. It only takes 1 to 2 weeks to complete. And it gives you the ability to establish that strong point of view that Jeffrey mentioned, so that you are out there providing certainty to everybody else who's looking for answers. We have a workbook that you can use to go through the exercises. And not only that, but we've taken our individual stories and put them together. That way you can see how we've applied the same framework in our life. You have, even though the process only takes a couple of weeks, you have access to all the materials for 6 months. And since this is an online program and it is impossible to address every single situation or question you might have, as part of that online course, you get a personal coaching session for support you need and to get the answers you want that are applied to your specific situation. This coach is also an engineer who actually has gone through the program as well. So he's certified in the process to help you and provide the additional support and encouragement you need to make sure you get the most from this material. The investment, which is only $299, which is the cost for typical of a career coach. With this investment, you get not only the career coaching, but access to the information that Jeffrey's provided in terms of steeple, as well as how to get your own personal strong point of view. And you can register today. Now, since you've come to the webinar today, a masterclass, to get the insight Jeffrey's provided, we'll discount that by $49. That way your price today is only $49 with the coupon code Early Mover Class. We're going to send this information out in the recap when you get the recording, so you'll have this information along with the discount code so you can sign up. And if you have any questions on the program, you can always email me. I'm always available to answer questions. Jeffrey can, answer questions on the specific program. Both of us have spent a lot of time putting this information together, taking our pivots and providing it so that you can pivot successfully to whatever your next engagement might be. Looks like we've got another question down here. So, oh yeah, asking about getting a copy of the information. Yes, we will send this out to you. This is valuable information we want you to have, and we want you to be able to use in your own career whether you're moving into consulting or whether you want to take a consulting approach in your own organization, which means people will start coming to you because they know you have the answers and they know you have the frameworks and ability to help them solve the biggest problems they're having today. So thank you very much. We're right at time. And I'd love to chat with anybody. Like I say, my email address is on the screen. You'll get a recording of the session. That way you can continue to reference this information and be successful in your career as well. So thank you for your time. I'll stop presenting. And then that's our session for today.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.